The accompanying story starts with Yun, a splendid young lady who is a striving comic craftsman with fantasies about becoming renowned one day. Then again, we have Sahan, who is an impaired, rich money manager from the city's most conspicuous family. Yun is enlivened by Sahan to make an affection comic that will draw in additional perusers. Given his gigantic prevalence among young ladies, to accomplish this, she chooses to see him face to face to ensure her comic's hero intently looks like him, while Yun is keeping an eye on him. Sahan's associate notification her there and asks her what she needs. Surprised, she quickly takes off, yet winds up slamming into, in all honesty, Sahan himself. Humiliated, she coincidentally spills her frozen yogurt on him before speedily taking off later. Sahan finds somebody is involving his picture for individual increase, so he chooses to make a move with regards to this issue. The following morning, Yun's supervisor critically gathers her to the workplace, guaranteeing there's an issue. She races her on her cruiser, yet unintentionally collides with a vehicle which ends up being Sahan's. His associate suspects she's following them and takes steps to call the police, yet Sahan steps in and advises his collaborator to allow her to go after showing up working. Yun determined from her manager that Sahan has recorded a claim against them for involving his picture in their comic. He then, at that point, says that he can't manage this since he's confronting monetary challenges, and he's additionally liable for really focusing on his little girl whose mother deserted them. Hearing this, Yun feels terrible, so she guarantees him that she will talk with Sahan and settle the matter in a little while. Yun shows up at Sahan's organization to converse with him anyway. The safety officer doesn't give her access and illuminates her that she should have an arrangement first, and the stand by time is a while since she can hardly stand by that Long Yun masks herself as a conveyance individual and sneaks past the watchman. On the first floor, she meets Sahan and his right hand similarly as the watchman surges in. She tumbles to the ground and Sahan helps her up. This satisfies her, yet shockingly, Sahan sends her out of there promptly. Still, she doesn't surrender and chooses to hang tight for him in the parking area. Yet the gatekeeper sees her there too, so she conceals in the storage compartment of Sahan's vehicle. When they get back, Yun figures out how to escape rapidly and enters Sahan's rich home. As she attempts to sneak past the associate, she runs over Sahan again. She then, at that point, rapidly covers his mouth so he doesn't shout and requests that he drop the claim anyway. He quickly enacts the caution, and after hearing it, his colleague shows up, so Sahan orders him to throw her out. At that point, Sahan's auntie Miss Fu shows up at the house, so the collaborator goes to occupy her. Sahan illuminates Yun that he will drop the claim in return for help, and she expects he's making a disgusting proposition. All of a sudden, Miss Fu strolls into the room and asks Sahan for what reason he missed the pre-arranged meetup she set up, tired of her strain to get hitched. Sahan acquaints Yun with his auntie and illuminates her that she is his sweetheart. Miss Fu doesn't trust this, so Yun professes to feel sickened to imply that she's pregnant. Seeing this, Miss Fu tells her that she's bold and strolls off after this. Yun expects that her assist with willing lead Sahan to drop the claim anyway. This doesn't occur, and he throws her out the next day. Miss Fu meets with Sahan's granddad and whines about his pregnant sweetheart anyway. Sahan explains that this isn't true and that he and his sweetheart are essentially dating, not having any desire to disturb his granddad. Sahan makes up a story that his better half is from the prosperous and persuasive Yen family. His granddad is excited by this information, and Sahan guarantees him that he will acquaint her with him the following day. After the fact, Yun is really focusing on her debilitated mother in the clinic. When Sahan's partner shows up searching for her, Sahan makes her a recommendation that in the event that she claims to be his life partner, he will drop the claim. He likewise vows to furnish her with a huge amount of cash and cover every last bit of her mum's clinical necessities to tackle every one of our concerns on the double. Yun consents to sign the agreement with him. The following day, Sahan carries Yun to meet Granddad, who is happy to see her anyway. Miss Fu attempts to ruin the second by blaming them for lying. She professes to have an image of the Yen's family's genuine little girl, and that Yun doesn't look like her. She then, at that point, shows him the photo of a young lady. Yet, the granddad illuminates her that individuals change with time after an effective gathering with the granddad. Sahan recommends to Yun that she ought to remain with him to stay away from doubt. She cheerfully concurs, eased. She will not need to stress over Lise any longer. In her new open room, Yun partakes in the recently discovered satisfaction in opportunity. Later on, she begins singing and moving boisterously in the restroom. Sahan gets aggravated by the clamor and goes to grumble anyway. Similarly, as he moves toward, he hears her slip and fall. Concerned, he races in to help. Yet Yun feels humiliated and begins shouting, making Sahan rapidly leave. The following morning, both Yun and Sahan are having a humiliated outlook on the washroom episode anyway. All at once, a group of beauticians showed up to give Yun a makeover for a young ladies' just party, coordinated by Miss Fu. After the makeover, Yun looks exceptionally lovely, and Sahan is totally confused when he sees her later at the party. Yun meets a few mean young ladies who mock her and even spill wine on her dress. However, at that point, a lady shows up and shields Yun from them, and furthermore, helps her eliminate the stain from her dress. She ends up being Karu, who is a notable television entertainer. She's thoughtful to Yun, and even loans her cloak to stow away or stain sometime later. We discover that Karu has no decent thought processes, and plans to additionally embarrass Yun. In the following scene, Sahan gets a call from somebody, and we discover that he's not really impaired, and is attempting to figure out who caused the accident, so he intends to go to the US to settle the issue without illuminating Yun for her own security that evening as Yun dozes. Sahan discreetly bids farewell, and leaves the next day. Yun requested Sahan, and is told by his associate that he's out traveling, leaving her responsible for the organization later at the workplace. Miss F attempts to take over, yet the colleague presents Yun as the new acting chief per Sahan's requests. Yun likewise got support from the leaders, making Miss Fu storm off. Out of resentment anyway, the malevolent lady doesn't surrender and begins spreading deceitful complaints about Yun, and even gets the press to hurt the organization's standing. Yun is stressed over what to do, yet fortunately Cho shows up with perfect timing to assist her together, they with social occasion proof, and uncover Miss Fu before the press. After learning of Miss Fu's treachery, the granddad chastens her and eliminates her from her situation. As VP, Yun is excited, yet Cho illuminates her that he didn't help her free of charge, so he welcomes to eat with him, to which she hesitantly concurs during their supper. Sahan suddenly shows up, and Yun is glad to see him anyway. The competition between the two people causes her to feel awkward. It's the cafe's commemoration, so they offer them 2 headbands for couples. Bite quickly puts them on, yet Sahan isn't a long ways behind, and puts on the other one later at home. Sahan gives Yun the headband, and she's thrilled. At that point, the two of them choose to break up their agreement and become a several. They choose to rest together, and she shocks him by embracing him warmly. The following day, Yun visits her mom in the medical clinic, where her auntie and cousin likewise show up. They have caught wind of a rich sweetheart and attempted to exploit her, yet Yun throws them out. After this, our heroine chooses to uncover her relationship with Sahan to her mom, who is excited and needs to meet him anyway. Her aunties and cousin don't surrender, and they go to Sahan's home, professing to be Yun's family and requesting cash. Yet Sahan sees through their plan and pushes them away after that. Illuminates Sahan that she would rather not hold misleading his caring granddad any longer anyway. He illuminates her that his granddad has a heart issue and it will be hard to tell him, so they should sit tight for the perfect opportunity. The following morning, Yun is returned to find that her auntie and cousin are currently functioning as houseworkers. It turns out Miss Fu recruited them. When the granddad shows up, they present themselves as Yun's family, leaving him completely confounded in light of the fact that Yun should be the girl of the well-off Yen family. As a result of this, Yun at last confesses about her actual character. Minutes after the fact, Sahan shows up to safeguard Yun, and he assumes the fault upon himself. This profoundly disturbs the granddad, who requested that Yun leave right away, and afterward falls oblivious in a hurry. They get him to the hospital. Sahan confronts Miss Fu, accusing her of causing the accident years ago. Miss Fu arrogantly denies the allegations, claiming he has no proof, and leaves. Later, Yun tearfully informs Sahan that she's ending their relationship, despite her love for him, because his grandfather needs him more than ever. Yun's mother comforts her, saying that couples often have to fight for their happy endings. Sahan confesses everything to his grandfather, admitting that it was all his idea and that he is in love with Yun. His grandfather then gives him an ultimatum: choose between Yun and his position in the company. Meanwhile, CH tries to get closer to Yun, but she firmly rejects him. Sahan arrives and asks Yun for a private conversation. He tells her about his grandfather's ultimatum and declares that he has chosen her because he cannot imagine life without her. To Yun's shock, Sahan stands up and reveals the truth about his accident, explaining that it was caused by his greedy aunt, Miss Fu, who isn't his real aunt, but was adopted by his grandfather. Sahan admits that Yun brought him happiness during his darkest times and begs her not to leave him. Moved, Yun embraces him tightly, and they kiss. Later, Yun confronts Miss Fu, revealing that someone present during the accident day provided evidence against her. Yun shows a flash drive, claiming it contains proof of Miss Fu's guilt. Enraged, Miss Fu destroys the flash drive, but finally confesses to her crimes, admitting she wanted to kill Sahan to take control of the company. At that moment, Sahan's grandfather enters, having heard Miss Fu's confession. Deeply disappointed, he disowns her and cuts all ties. Miss Fu is arrested and imprisoned for her crimes. Yun and Sahan decide to focus on making his grandfather happy. Later, when Sahan was getting back from work, unexpectedly, his vehicle stops subsequent to crashing into somebody. In the following scene, we see a young lady named Yun awakening in the emergency clinic. She learns from Sahan's associate that she slammed into her vehicle, yet luckily she's good with no significant wounds. Sahan offers to drive Yun home securely. The last's a digit distrustful at first, yet after some demanding she agrees. When she returns home, she hears some upheaval, so she rapidly expresses gratitude towards Sahan and heads inside. Shockingly, Yun finds that her stepmother and stepsister have shown up there and are bugging her mum to sign a few reports. This rankles her, so she slaps her stepsister Jenton and lets her mum know that they're attempting to ransack her tragically. Jenton likewise gets forceful and snatches a shard of broken stoneware prepared to go after Yun, yet without a moment to spare, Sahan and his partner showed up to stop her. Still, the stepmother's theatrics go on as she takes a shard and takes steps to end her life. Sahan then illuminates her that they have recorded her statement, so her passing will be viewed as self-caused. This at long last powers the stepmother and stepsister to withdraw and take off from the house. Following the episode, Yun expresses gratitude towards Sahan for saving her. Our legend makes reference to that she owes him some help, yet she contends that they're even, since he coincidentally hit her, the associate then, at that point, says that the CCTV film will demonstrate she went across the street at the red light and crashed into their vehicle. After this, Sahan gives Yun's card and requests that she consider him that evening. Sahan enthusiastically hangs tight for Yun's message, and when she messages him, he's excited. In the meantime, Yun hears her folks contending and goes to their room. We discover that her stepfather is the seat of the Yi gathering, which has a place with her mum's family. He needs his natural little girl Jentan to come live with them. Yun, then at that point, advises her mum to pack their possessions so they can get back to the granddad's place. This panics the stepfather, so he makes a deal to avoid referencing Jentan once more and to trim binds with his courtesan. Following this, Yun says that she needs to bury in family bunch anyway, to get her far from monetary issues. Her stepfather says she can function as a server in their cafe. The next day, Yun starts her position at the eatery. Sahan visits her and asks about her commitment to the Lin family child. This, out of nowhere, advises her that she should meet with the Lin family today, so she hurriedly leaves without answering Sahan's inquiry. After arriving at home, she meets with her planned life partner, Lindsay, without talking with her. The two families immediately organize their commitment for the next day. Anyway, Yun isn't satisfied with this choice, so she baits Lindsay into her room and starts luring him. When he begins drawing near to her, she unexpectedly starts shouting Yun, then, at that point, illuminates his dad, Mr. Lin, that he attempted to attack her. Thus, poor people fellow is severely reproved that as well as after the gathering, Yun follows Lindsay to an inn where he's meeting his stepsister Jentan. She figures out how to take a private photograph of the two together, yet she's not finished. At this point, she arranges major areas of strength for Anne of wine to be shipped off their room. Lindsay and Jentan both partake in the wine and each other's organization, while Yun tunes in external their entryway. All of a sudden, Sahan and his collaborator seem they ask what she's doing. Yet, she dismisses the inquiry and wishes them a blissful kids' day. When she understands that the inn has a place with Sahan, she gets apprehensive and rapidly leaves. The day after, it's Yun and Lindsay's engagement party, but Lindsay hasn't shown up yet, still asleep from the strong wine. With her fiancé absent, Yun steps forward confidently and announces that the engagement is off. Mr. Lin tries to explain that Lindsay is stuck in traffic, but Yun shocks the guests by showing photos of her fiancé with someone else. She declares herself single and open to other suitors. Suddenly, Sahan arrives and expresses interest in Yun. Her stepfather agrees immediately, but Yun hesitates, saying she needs time to think. This hurts Sahan, who suspects her hesitation is because of his disability. Later, fueled by revenge, Lindsay confronts Yun and humiliates her. Angered, Yun slaps him. He tries to attack her, but Sahan's assistant intervenes just in time. Sahan then arranges a romantic dinner for Yun, despite her doubts about their compatibility. He assures her he won't pressure her and gives her time to think. Meanwhile, Lindsay, feeling bitter, decides to hire someone to harm Yun. Lacking money, he settles for harassing her. The next day, thugs arrive at the restaurant, demanding food they don't serve. They degrade Yun before leaving, threatening to return frequently. Trembling with fear, Yun receives a call from Sahan, who sends her address and invites her to dinner. During the meal, he notices her anxiety, but she falsely claims she's okay. Later, Yun catches her stepfather searching for a document that states he won't receive money in a divorce if he cheats on her mother. She warns her trusting mother, but she refuses to believe her husband would betray her. The next day, the thugs return, demanding food again. This time, Yun fights back and beats them, though she gets injured. Sahan tends to her wounds at his home, where she tells him about the thugs. He regrets not sending his assistant for her protection and suggests she stays the night. He tucks her into bed and kisses her goodnight. Meanwhile, Lindsay scolds the thugs for being beaten by a girl. Sahan arrives and threatens them for hurting his girlfriend. Surprisingly, the thugs reject Lindsay's offer and beat him instead. Sahan returns home and sleeps beside Yun, comforting her with his presence. The following morning, they're seen resting together intently. Yun awakens, and she's hypnotized by his looks. When Sahan wakes into, he begins prodding her, causing her blush, and take off later the two to eat together. Yun then specifies that she ought to leave since her mum may be stressed over her. When she gets back, she finds her mum crying, coming clean with her that she learned about her voracious spouse. She got a call from the bank uncovering that he'd been moving their butt resources into his record. Her mum apologizes to Yun for not having the option to furnish her with a more joyful day-to-day life. Accordingly, Yun solaces her mum. Yun meets Shahan once more and offers him chocolates as a thank you motion. Anyway, he uncovers that he could do without them. This prompts Yun to give the chocolates to his collaborator. Yet Sahan gets so envious that he grasps her hand and chooses to eat the chocolate himself from the second Yun heads outside. She coincidentally catches to her stepsister. Yun attempts to leave, yet Jentan stops her. Beginning a silly contention, Yun ends up being irate and pushes Jentan, making her tumble to the sloppy ground. She further attempts to beat her. Shahan's colleague shows up and stops her the scene, then moves to Yun's stepfather with his courtesan, who is crying and begging him to separate from Yun's mum. Anyway, he tells her that he can't separate from her right now, since they will not get any property, all things considered, so they should devise another technique and move every one of the resources and cash into their names before separate. Unexpectedly, Jentan shows up at the house covered in mud and crying. Her dad asks what happened, and she reveals that Yun bullied and embarrassed her. Hearing this, the dad becomes furious and returns home to confront Yun. He demands that she apologize to Jentan, but when she refuses, he starts yelling at her savagely. At that moment, Yun's mum arrives and defends her daughter. She demands that he sign the divorce papers, claiming she no longer wants to be with him. Frightened, he changes his tone and begins apologizing, begging her to stay with him. Yun's mum then throws the divorce papers in his face, but he still refuses to divorce her and storms out. The next day, Yun and her mum meet with her financial manager, who is also one of the shareholders of her company. Yun's mum says that she wants to conduct an audit of the company's financial records. The manager agrees to her request and asks them to visit the office on Monday. However, the manager later calls Yun's stepfather and informs him about this, revealing that the two are conspiring together. Later, while Yun is alone in the parking lot, an unknown man starts to follow her. She begins rushing and when she looks back sees no one. She then becomes panicked and runs, only to bump into Sahan's bodyguard. In her fear, she starts hitting him without looking, while Sahan laughs at her. Subsequently, Sahan takes Yun to pick a dress for an upcoming party. Yun is thrilled when she arrives in the room filled with many beautiful dresses. After some time, she finally picks a gorgeous dress and steps outside wearing it. Sahan is mesmerized by her beauty and praises her. However, unbeknownst to them, the mysterious person is secretly recording their interaction. Later, the mysterious man heads to his car, but Sahan's associate arrives and forcefully takes the phone from his hand. He then warns the man to stay away from both Sahan and Yun from now on. While dropping Yun home, she surprises Sahan by kissing him. After she leaves, Sahan's associate tells him that Yun may be in danger and that they should help her. Yun and her mum arrive at the workplace to meet the chief, but the chief secretly calls Yun's stepfather to inform him about their visit. The stepfather wants them occupied at the workplace so he can search for the prenuptial agreement at their home. However, Yun starts to become suspicious of the chief's intentions, so she takes her mum and leaves the office. Back at home, The stepfather manages to find and destroy the prenuptial document. When Yun and her mom return, the stepfather arrogantly declares that he is ready for a divorce. Yun's mom retrieves the document, only to find that the papers are blank. The stepfather begins to celebrate, but Yun reveals that she has the real document. The stepfather destroys that one too, but Yun calmly says she has multiple copies. The stepfather becomes desperate and claims that he controls all the company's shares, so Yun and her mum will have to accept him or become destitute. However, Yun is one step ahead and reveals that she had his accounts frozen. In a flashback, it's shown that Sahan had already purchased the entire company and frozen the stepfather's accounts. In a final plea, the stepfather begs Yun's mum not to divorce him, but Sahan arrives and throws him out. In the next scene, it's the day of Sahan and Yun's engagement. Yun is looking sharp and eagerly waiting, but as time passes, Sahan is nowhere to be seen. She becomes increasingly worried until she suddenly sees him walking towards her. Sahan shares that since he met her, he has been undergoing intensive therapy and can finally walk. He claims that her love has healed him, and Yun feels deeply emotional hearing this. The story concludes on a happy note as Yun and Sahan finally get engaged.